On a lonely hill overlooking the town of Danvers, Massachusetts, a massive Gothic structure once dominated the skyline like a fortress of silence. Built in 1878, Danvers State Hospital was designed to be a revolutionary institution for the mentally ill. Its towering spires and endless corridors gave it the appearance of a castle rather than a hospital. The building followed the Kirkbride plan, an architectural theory that believed fresh air and sunlight could cure mental illness. At the time, this concept was considered progressive and humane. The hospital was meant to be a place of recovery, not punishment. Patients were supposed to heal through structure, routine, and peaceful surroundings. Wide windows were installed to flood the wards with natural light. Long hallways were designed to create order and symmetry. The hilltop location was chosen to provide isolation from the chaos of city life. From a distance, the structure looked hopeful and grand. Up close, however, its size felt overwhelming and oppressive. Few could have imagined that this symbol of hope would eventually become a symbol of fear.
By the early 1900s, the hospital that was built for 500 patients was housing more than 2,000. What was designed as a sanctuary quickly became dangerously overcrowded. Beds were placed in hallways, storage rooms, and even basements. Doctors and nurses were overwhelmed, outnumbered, and undertrained. Resources ran thin as patient numbers continued to rise year after year. Treatment began to shift from care to control. Isolation rooms replaced therapy sessions. Sedation replaced conversation. Patients who once walked freely through gardens were now confined indoors. Windows that were meant to bring light became barriers of confinement. Whispers of mistreatment began circulating beyond the hospital walls. Former employees quietly spoke of harsh discipline and questionable practices. The dream of humane treatment was slowly collapsing under the weight of reality. As conditions deteriorated, desperation inside the hospital gave rise to increasingly extreme treatments. Doctors began experimenting with procedures that were considered modern at the time, but brutal by today's standards. Electroconvulsive therapy was administered without the safeguards we now consider essential. Patients were often restrained to metal beds before the current surged through their bodies. Insulin shock therapy was another common method used in an attempt to reset the mind. The procedure frequently pushed patients into comas that could last for hours. But the most controversial treatment was the lobotomy. Marketed as a breakthrough, it was presented as a cure for severe mental illness. In reality, it often left patients permanently altered or emotionally hollow. Thousands across the country underwent the procedure during its peak popularity. Inside these walls, the line between innovation and cruelty became dangerously blurred. Families were often told that these treatments were the only hope left. For many patients, however, the cost of that hope was irreversible.
By the mid-20th century, serious concerns began to surround Danvers State Hospital in Massachusetts. The institution that once symbolized hope was now facing growing public scrutiny. Reports described severe overcrowding inside the massive Gothic structure. Living conditions were said to be deteriorating year after year. Families began questioning why their loved ones were not improving. Former employees quietly revealed stories of harsh discipline and questionable practices. Investigative journalists started examining what was happening behind closed doors at Danvers State Hospital. Newspaper articles exposed the consequences of overcrowding and underfunding. Public trust in large psychiatric institutions began to collapse. Danvers was no longer seen as a place of healing. Instead, it became a symbol of systemic failure in mental health care. Government reviews led to funding cuts and the closure of multiple wings. In 1992, after more than a century, Danvers State Hospital closed its doors forever. After closing in 1992, Danvers State Hospital was left abandoned on its lonely hill in Massachusetts. The massive Gothic structure stood silent, overlooking the town below. Inside, furniture, medical equipment, and personal items were left behind. Patient files remained scattered across floors and inside broken cabinets. Windows shattered over time as weather and vandals took their toll. Graffiti slowly covered the once sterile hospital walls. Urban explorers began sneaking into the decaying structure. Photographs of the abandoned ward spread across early internet forums. Stories of strange noises and shadowy figures soon followed. Some visitors claimed they felt an overwhelming sense of dread inside the building. Paranormal investigators declared Danvers one of the most haunted locations in New England. Whether haunted or not, the silence inside the hospital felt heavy and unnatural. Danvers State Hospital had entered a new chapter, not as a place of treatment, but as a symbol of decay and mystery. Even after its closure, Danvers State Hospital did not feel empty. Locals claimed the hill still carried a presence. Wind moving through broken windows sounded almost like whispers. Footsteps echoed in corridors where no one was standing. Some visitors reported sudden cold spots in sealed rooms. Others claimed to see figures standing at the ends of hallways before vanishing. Former patients' names were said to appear scratched into the walls. The isolation rooms felt especially oppressive after sunset. Investigators recorded unexplained sounds during overnight stays. Electronic devices would occasionally fail without warning. Whether paranormal or psychological, fear inside Danvers felt immediate and physical. The building seemed to absorb every sound and return it distorted. And on certain nights, the hill overlooking Massachusetts felt less like history and more like something waiting.
In the early 2000s, developers purchased the land where Danvers State Hospital once stood. Plans were announced to demolish most of the historic structure. Preservationists protested, arguing the building was a piece of American psychiatric history. But the decision had already been made. Heavy machinery arrived at the base of the hill. One by one, the outer wings were torn down. Brick walls that had stood for over a century crumbled within seconds. Dust filled the air as towers that once dominated the skyline disappeared. For some, the demolition felt like closure. For others, it felt like erasing the evidence of what had happened inside. Only a small portion of the original facade was preserved. Luxury apartments were later built on the same hill. But beneath the new foundations, the past was never truly gone. Today, few physical traces of Danvers State Hospital remain. Yet its story continues to echo through documentaries, books, and local memory. It stands as a reminder of how medicine can evolve, and how easily good intentions can spiral into tragedy. Danvers began as a symbol of hope in 1878. It became a symbol of overcrowding and failed systems. And eventually, it transformed into a symbol of decay and fear. Urban legends may exaggerate what happened there, but documented history alone is unsettling enough. Thousands of lives passed through those halls. Some found treatment. Many did not. And on certain nights in Massachusetts, some still say the hill remembers.